Are you someone who loves the ocean, climate solutions, sustainability, and marine biology? Hi, I'm Carissa, a marine biologist and co host of Sustainability in the Sea, a podcast for ocean people looking to find their way in ocean conservation. We sit down with wave makers doing awesome work to protect our blue planet, and you can listen to their story to help you build yours. Find us wherever you listen to podcasts.
Welcome to Climify, the podcast that connects climate scientists and design educators together so that we can help combat our climate crisis in our classrooms. The discussions on this program are geared to help you climify your syllabi to assign projects that not only teach design fundamentals, but also can have a positive impact on our climate.
Hi, I'm Michelle. I'm a multidisciplinary designer, and you can find my work at michellewin.design.
Hi, I'm Gianna Romero. I also go by Gigi Romero, and I am an industrial designer, but I prefer multidisciplinary designer as my title. I also have a minor in design for sustainability from the Savannah College of Art and Design. And where you can find me is at giannaromerodesigns.com.
In the past 2 episodes, we focused on 6 current design students and how they felt about their design education. On today's program, I'm talking with 2 recent design graduates to learn more about the challenges they've faced trying to get a job or freelance as a climate designer. Both Michelle and Gianna are a few years out of school and place their climate values as a top priority in their freelance work and wherever they want to get a full-time job. What they have to say about this journey is a bit disheartening, I have to admit. But what I admire about them both is that they don't give up, and I do believe they will help bring change to the design field. I hope you enjoy their stories and gain some valuable insights into how to freelance as a climate designer. And for the design educators listening in, they both offer good ideas on what we can do to help make it easier for our students to follow a less bumpier path than Michelle and Gianna. Michelle, Gigi, welcome to this special edition of Climify, where we're talking to 2 recent grads to learn more about what they're doing and what they hope could happen in their design education for, I guess, future generations, so to speak, for being involved with climate, sustainability, and other things. I'm glad you both are here.
Glad to be here.
Same.
Yeah. What are you both up to these days and after graduation, and what kind of careers are you looking for? Michelle, we'll start with you.
Okay. So I've been freelancing after graduation, and otherwise I've been interning part-time. And I guess I'm I'm open to a lot of opportunities because I am multidisciplinary and I'm not specializing yet. So, um, I guess I'm just trying to get more experience, and I'm open to working for a company whose values align with my own. So I would want to work towards something um, for the common good instead of just doing,
The evil empire, right?
sure.
Okay. Gigi, what about you?
Currently I am unemployed and I am sort of looking for the same thing. I'm really looking for a company structure that focuses on either supporting employees and designers like myself and the vision that I have for designing for the climate,
Mhm.
or just, in their own values as what their company stands for around the environmental impact. Um, I have been doing a little bit of freelance work, but most of my experience is in startup work. And I do have a few internship experiences from my college years in industrial design.
Yeah, well, both of you mentioned a few things that overlap here. Values, you mentioned common good, and you mentioned the climate or the environment. Why are those things so important for you as a designer and maybe as a career?
Um, For me, this sort of hit home in college. I did have two professors that were in my minor, Design for Sustainability. They taught my courses there. And after hearing some of their experiences with either producing like mass productive products or certain ideologies that kind of evolved over time in the design industry, um, they weren't happy with like what they were doing beforehand, and they
Mm,
really tried to teach their students, this is the right way to do it. These are the right ways to think about design. And
yeah.
a lot of it stemmed back from um, just putting the environment first before you even start the design process. And so I that kind of stuck with me, and that's how I want to do my career. That's how I want to, impact design in my way. Is starting from the beginning, kind of taking my time through slow design and stuff like that through my career and anywhere that I go.
Yeah. So they would do you think without that you would be where you are right now, or were they like the catalyst for this?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I don't think I would be where I'm at now. A big part of the reason why I left one of my previous startups was because a lot of those values that I took with me from college didn't end up like their values didn't align with mine.
Hmm.
So to be honest, like, no, I don't. And it had a huge impact on me.
Yeah. Michelle, what about you?
I guess I feel like it's a really huge issue right now, the climate crisis, and to just kind of gloss over it doesn't feel right to me, especially as a designer that is interested in using their skills for the common good. I feel that it would just be wasteful to not use my skills
Hmm.
uh, towards something good.
Was this something for, I guess, both of you that started even before you went to college? Was this something you thought about when you were, an elementary school kid not too long ago?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts back then?
Well, I remember just learning about it when I was a kid, and I just was shocked. And I was
About the
really interested,
climate or
yeah, about climate and then just like recycling. And from then on, I was really obsessed with recycling and turning off the lights and turning off the water. And after that, it kind of ended. I kind of forgot about it. And
oh,
then,
no.
yeah. And then as I got older, just watching the news and reading articles and things about it, I kind of got into it again. And it was just a constant reminder. And now I feel like it's just part of everyday life.
Mhm. Do you have a similar story, or what was your interest from a younger age, or were you not?
To be honest, I don't think it was as prominent in my childhood. Mine is kind of the opposite. In college, it was where I kind of took my responsibility as a designer
Yeah.
into consideration. As a kid, it was, it was there. Like I remember, the Great Barrier Reef and, seeing like the transition from like it flourishing to like bleached coral and things like that. And it hurt. I remember those feelings as it hit.
Yeah.
It never like hit me as to like, okay, now this is what I want to do with my career. Like as a kid, but I was aware of it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I remember back to those days when I think recycling started in my community, and my parents weren't all that into it. Like, we had a little bin, and we're supposed to put the boxes of cereal, obviously empty, and our milk jugs out there. And they just, I mean, I always have to pull it out of the trash because they didn't think it was worth their time. And I got all upset about it. That's how I remember getting involved personally with this. I don't know if that rings true for you, Michelle, but it kind of sounds like it.
Yeah, I always felt so wasteful. And like deep down inside, I felt like I knew there was something wrong because I felt like the way we lived life was just so easy. And I remember asking one of my parents one time, I was like, where does all the trash go?
Like you guys have uh, some experience in this, deep interest in it. What was your take on like the rest of the students in your program? Did you feel like did they talk about this topic? Like what happened?
No, I can't really remember exactly. But I do remember there being some like extreme like sustainability, like some of the friends that I have were like super involved in like the recycling, like their community as far as like, they would ride their bike around the college campus.
Mhm.
They sold their car, like they like legit went into like full board waste mode, and
They were serious.
they were serious.
Yeah.
I never really like talked to them. I just kind of saw their actions, and I was like, okay. Yeah, I like didn't feel worthy to like be in some
Really?
sustainability classes because there was so many people who were like extremely into like zero waste living.
Was this then the sustainability minor or
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So and you were also a graphic design student, right?
No, I was industrial design.
Industrial, that's what I meant, industrial design.
Yeah.
What about there? Were people like was this a topic in industrial design classes or
Oh, no. Industrial
no?
design, which that was an answer to one of the questions that you sent over to us in an email.
Yeah.
I wish that would have been a fundamental part of industrial design in sustainability courses, because this was just a minor that I chose out of passion and like
Mhm.
figuring out that's sort of where I wanted to go with my career. Um, but no, I mean, I did have one professor who did cross over between the two, and he taught industrial design and design for sustainability.
Yeah.
And so he incorporated a lot of, a mixture of both, which I really appreciated in
So you
his.
had one at least. One
That's
person.
one.
Just
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I've had people tell me on this show before that why is sustainability a separate class, right?
Yeah.
Why isn't it just embedded in everything that we do as designers?
Mhm.
It seems like you felt that way a little bit.
Very much so. I still feel like that to this day.
Michelle, did you have what were your classmates like? Were they super interested in this topic or
Well, Eric, since you were once my professor,
okay,
you
yeah,
know,
transparency. Yes, I was.
I feel like there were a lot of classmates that were either really into it or just not at all.
Mm,
Um, there were a lot of people that I met that I really connected with on the subject, and they kind of felt like they wanted to do something about it, but just didn't really know how.
didn't know how.
Yeah, and then there were classmates that just kind of didn't really care, were more into branding and like the visual side, just like showy. And, that's okay. But I feel like there were a lot of people who cared. And I feel like that comes with being a designer,
Mhm.
caring.
Yeah, we should care, right? I even think that the climate designers group talked about this, but this idea of the Hippocratic oath that like the doctors and nurses have to take about do no harm, and that maybe designers need to have some sort of Hippocratic oath for their profession. But of course, like it in order to do that, you need the education, right? You can't just expect
Right.
someone to do it and know how to. So I'm wondering for you guys, like how do you think design education, first of all, went for you? And considering your interests and values, like what could be done better?
Yeah. Well, I went to the Savannah College of Art and Design, and I feel like it was very fast paced. I mean, our semesters essentially were called quarters. So it was intense. I mean, there are a lot of times where like I didn't like my projects just because they felt like more tedious to like
Yeah,
try and get done. I mean, I had two jobs. I had more than two jobs at one point, but my senior year when I was doing my focus, I had two jobs, trying to
yeah,
manage all of these things. It was just a lot. Um, so it was really challenging, but I
Hmm.
feel like the things that prepared me the most in a weird way was connecting with my colleagues that I had
Mm.
projects with and or my professors that I still stay in contact with till today.
Your network, right?
Yeah, the network of people that I gained from SCAD is amazing.
That's cool.
Um, yeah, so I feel like that in a way I've been prepared, but I feel like like what we were saying earlier is like having the sustainability integrated into every
Yeah.
class that was design related. I feel like would have prepared me a little bit more for how to approach my passion and like how to approach my passion in the workforce.
Hmm. Are you finding, like, in some of the freelance work you're doing or jobs that you've had, that sustainability comes up or climate comes up in those jobs?
No, not at all.
Hmm.
And that's sort of
That's
bothered.
depressing.
Yeah, because, when I don't want to say submit yourself to freelance, but like when you give your all to freelance, it
Yeah.
becomes about the client and what their needs are rather than your own.
Oh,
And
yeah,
so,
yeah.
like, having to navigate, uh, that tension is a little tricky, as far as what I've found. Because I'm very like climate focused in what I want to do, and I try to preach that to like the people that either hire me on or I'm working for another company. And a lot of that climate focus comes from thinking through every little design that I do in a slow design type of way.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, when freelance contracts you, they have a time period that they expect you to get so much stuff done in. And sometimes it's not, you know, eco considerable. So it is
Yeah.
challenging.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's even a whole other topic for you guys, is like, as students, right? Did you get enough? I mean, you're both freelancing, you're contracting after graduation. Was this something that was even talked about when you were in school? Michelle, was this a topic that you heard? How to freelance, how to live in that gig life?
I feel like it was brought up maybe once or twice. Otherwise, you just kind of have to ask for the information, which is fine. But um, I felt like whenever my professors did bring it up, they would say that, I mean, it's possible, but you really have to work hard. And otherwise, freelance is a great thing to do on the side if you want to, pursue a different avenue or if you need, extra
Yeah.
financial support or maybe just a place where you can be creative if your job is more corporate or something like that.
Do you think this was like something that should have been talked about more?
I guess so. I mean, I feel like just general preparation for searching for a job or just preparing your portfolio or your resume
Hmm.
um, is important just because we're not otherwise taught those skills,
Yeah,
except for the one portfolio class that we had, which was 8 weeks, but I do wish it was longer.
longer. Gigi, did SCAD have a lot of these conversations with you?
No, like not at
No?
all. Really,
So similar experience here, it sounds like.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with Michelle in the sense that I wish they would have told you like how to navigate the freelance world when you're out in it and not just like as a side thing because I mean, I've been in the freelance game since I graduated in 2019. But at a certain point, some people do take this on as a career
Yeah.
option,
Yeah.
and that should be considered too, rather than just here's my title, here's my position with that same title. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I wonder, like, for both of you here, like, the idea of being a contractor, freelancer, do you think that gives you more um, power or less in terms of talking about climate or bringing the concept of sustainability into your work?
I guess I feel like it gives you less power just because if you're freelancing, then I guess you're not necessarily someone that is there long term. But I use
Right.
that term loosely because sometimes people work with freelancers for a really long time and they just like freelancing with them. They don't want to bring them on full time, and maybe the freelancer doesn't want to be on full time. But
Mhm.
considering that relationship, I guess, I don't know, something about freelance sometimes feels more transactional to me
Yeah.
and less personal. And like you have less of a relationship with the company and the people who work there.
Yeah.
And I feel that a lot of the time when you're freelancing, it's something that's remote, at least for me. In
Mm.
my experience, it is. And so you don't really establish a personal connection in the same way that you would if you were in person. And with that being said, you kind of don't know if you should voice your opinion.
Yeah.
Because again, when you're doing
That
freelance,
makes
you're just
sense.
supposed to do what the client wants.
Right. Yeah, that totally makes sense to me, right? Because how much investment do they have in you? And that sort of is like a question mark for you in your head. Like, how much should I really invest in them if they're not really, giving
That's
me the health care that I need, right?
Yeah, I have to totally agree with you, Michelle. I feel like a lot of freelancers do see it as like your transactional type of relationship rather than a place where you can speak your mind and lend your experience to whatever project they have you're doing. Um, yeah, like I feel like anytime that I've tried to give some sort of feedback, most of the time it's like, okay, well, I'm using you as a tool, please get these things done rather than,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I'll sit here and listen to, how you've come about with your career and what you really want. Like it is a challenge.
Yeah. So with that in mind, I'm assuming you're both looking for full-time work then, or am I wrong on that? Do you enjoy being a freelancer?
I don't.
Yeah. I
It's
mean, I wouldn't
fine.
say that I don't like it, but well, sometimes I don't like it. I think it just really depends on your client
Sure.
and what you're doing. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's very true. It
Yeah.
definitely wants to deal with the client, what they expect, when they expect it.
Yeah.
For the most part, I've been through like startups in my career, and they're really difficult to work with, especially wearing a bunch of hats. And you kind of have to do that with
Mm.
freelance too. But I'm ready for
Yeah.
establishment.
Yeah, like the even I think in my experience too, as someone who worked full time in house or at an agency, like I always had to wear different hats, right? It's sometimes explaining design to a coworker, right? Like, no, this is what I do. It's you actually have a degree for it. And then, just hey, I have to be a copywriter today because they're out sick, or all of a sudden I've become a packaging designer. Yeah, it sounds like you've already experienced that.
Yeah, very much so. That's why I've kind of gone with the term of multidisciplinary designer.
Yeah, yeah.
'Cause,
You
I mean,
both did.
yeah. I mean, I can relate to it. We're
Yeah.
in it, day in, day out. And there's a part of me that really loves it, but another part of me that like kind of wants to hone in on something,
Mhm.
I feel like it'll come with time.
Yeah, it does. I didn't forget you, Michelle. I didn't give you a chance to answer the question about what your education, uh, how it prepared you well, and what you would like to have seen differently there, specifically around climate.
Okay. So I feel like that's kind of a hard question because part of me feels like you gain what you give.
Mm,
You have to be interested and you have to want to be a better designer and ask questions and be engaged. Otherwise, you might not be, getting the full experience that you could be because, your professors are always going to be there and want you to learn, but, they can't force you to be interested or,
right.
want to ask questions or be better. It's up to you to, come to class and want to actually have a good project that impresses people. And so I feel like I can't really say it falls on my university's shoulders or mine on my own. I guess it's kind of both.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's a two-way
and
street, right?
yeah, yeah, it is. And I feel like in terms of climate and sustainability, I honestly feel that it was kind of glossed over. I felt like it was brought up when we would talk about coming up, with, oh, our theoretical own companies or just some sort of project about or related to social responsibility or environmental responsibility. And it would just be an aspect of it. It would be a component of it. Oh, how are you addressing this? And then we would move on. And it wouldn't be any deeper than that. It was kind of surface level. And I just wish that it was more foundational.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. It's been something I've been arguing for a while. So it's good to hear that both of you feel that way, and that a lot of your other classmates did too. But maybe we do need just some work on getting everyone on board with that. But um, and maybe this question I think gets to that point, and that do you feel that climate change is an important topic for designers to be to understand, whether it be in school or on the job?
Yeah, I do feel that it is important because after I graduated, I kind of realized that I didn't know my environmental footprint as a graphic designer. And it's kind of complex. It's kind of hard because you're more digital. Sometimes, you're involved in, print design and the materials for packaging and things like that. But from a distance, you're
Yeah.
only involved at a distance.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just the idea there that the distance, right? Like you don't know the materials that you're using well enough. If you're doing packaging, like what is it the package made out of? Well, you just designed what the outside of the
Oh,
packaging
right.
looks like, right?
Yeah. And just like I felt like uncomfortable not knowing my footprint as a graphic designer because it's different. We have files and digital storage,
Yeah.
whereas sometimes industrial designers or, fashion designers, they have, a more physical thing to deal with.
Yeah, it is very much an important topic for designers. And I feel like sometimes it's not taken seriously either. Um, but I have to agree with Michelle with the point of it that like we have such a responsibility for the impact that our designs may cause, either in the climate or just the environment in general.
Yeah.
And it's a big part of like what made me rethink my entire career at one point and why I was doing it.
Really? What was your thoughts there?
Yeah, it was actually through one of my professors. And he was my favorite professor. Um, he was actually one of the creators of the Keurig coffee machines.
Oh yeah?
And he was actually the professor who kind of straddled in between industrial design classes and design for sustainability classes that I talked about earlier.
Interesting. Because
And
isn't Keurig kind of a problem for the environment, right?
exactly, well, that was the biggest reason why I, had to rethink about a lot of the things that I was doing as a designer. One thing that stuck with me that he said was, the reason why he said he was teaching sustainability classes in tandem with industrial design was because he felt like he had a huge responsibility to teach
Oh yeah.
others on like what he wished he would have known before making all of these, environmentally changing decisions with his career that he didn't really he wasn't taught himself in order to consider.
Yeah.
And I have such a huge respect for.
Gosh, imagine if he was taught those things.
Right? Exactly. That was what set me on a different path as to like what I'm designing for.
Didn't
And
he say he regretted doing the whole project at
oh
one?
yeah, no. He that was like one of the first things that like he introduced his class with
Wow,
was
what a
like
story.
it really was. I mean, it touched me. I still tell the story like to so many people to this day. But yeah, I mean, if I'm an industrial designer and he was an industrial designer, in my eyes, it's like if my creations ever get to be as big as the Keiko or the Keurig machines are today, how am I going to shape the future? What is my responsibility?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. No
how
kidding.
do I take take responsibility for it?
Now I'm assuming, and I may be wrong because you should never assume that you had some conversations about materials in your minor and sustainability. Uh, I wonder, did you in industrial design have conversations in there about plastics and metals and the materials they're used to make products?
Yeah. No, we did, and it was by that same professor
Oh,
actually.
good. Okay.
Yeah, no, got a little bit of both though, which I really appreciated because, he taught us plastics, of course, and then he also taught us a lot of alternatives.
Right.
And, we had to research our own, biodegradable and sustainable materials to work with in a project that I actually won a international design award for later
Oh,
on.
awesome.
But yeah, like he taught those in order to make a product with just sustainable
Mm,
materials. And
yeah.
that was really difficult. And it sort of like made me think like, okay, if this is really difficult right now,
Yeah.
like what is my career going to be like on the outside of college? And like when are these materials going to be mass produced as far as like um, sustainable materials, and like how can I find these and incorporate these into my passion as to
Yeah.
what I do with my career. So yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Are you finding materials coming up a lot in your work outside of college now?
Very rarely. You
Yeah.
have to really scope them out, but, I do, and it was something that, I take as a priority.
Yeah. Michelle, did you have a lot of conversations in the graphic design program about materials, essentially?
No.
No, not even
No.
paper, not
Wow.
even paper and
No, we
inks.
didn't talk about paper or ink or any of that. I remember learning a lot about materials in my intro to fashion course. I learned a lot about sustainability and how those materials were made, and how cotton is actually really it has a huge impact on the environment. And
Yeah, it does.
but no, I never learned about like what printing something with a poster would do.
So, what are your thoughts then, both of you, about if we are to create climate design or graduate climate designers from design school? How do we incorporate? Should we incorporate materials into what you learn?
I think definitely leaving a larger margin for what those things cost and how much time it takes in order to research where those materials are coming from, how you're going
Yeah,
to, make them for specific tooling that, you're pre-existingly paying for.
yeah,
Those materials are a ton more expensive. And I actually had a situation like that, not too long ago where we had to rethink the tooling of one of our products for one of my other companies entirely because we wanted to use a more sustainable craft cardboard. And it
oh,
cost them a ton of money, but that was the investment that they chose. And that was something that I think more companies should, prioritize.
well, that makes me feel better.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like it's hard when it comes to graphic design, but I just generally feel that all artists or designers should be familiar with the materials or mediums that they're using every day and how they should safely handle them and dispose of them or whatnot.
Yeah, so this is where we get to the fun part of the conversation here. You're both of you are here to share your experiences and your design education and career so far. And I want to spend some time with you brainstorming or hearing your thoughts on your task is to redo or rethink design education, graphic, industrial design, fashion design, you name it, for the future, right? Like what we have a lot of problems we're facing and designers should be aware of them. And one of them is the climate. So this is your opportunity to help us design educators rethink what we're doing. And so do you have some initial thoughts about that? Like what needs to be done to change so that some of the negative experiences that you had are fixed? Any thoughts on that? That's a big question. I'm sorry.
I love the question, though. I mean,
Yeah, me too.
where else do you get this sort of platform? And I really appreciate you asking this question. Um, it's very difficult to say. I mean, with how fast design is evolving now, like there's so many different programs that I've had to learn that, I never learned in college that weren't even on the radar in college.
Mm.
That was all like 3 years ago. Um,
Yeah, it moves really fast, huh?
yeah, especially engineering, like with industrial design and engineering software programs and
Technology.
rendering and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I would have to say definitely start with cradle to cradle mentality first, like
Mm.
teaching the values of cradle to cradle design.
Can you
With,
define that for maybe some of the people who don't know what that means?
yeah, cradle to cradle. I'll say it in like a synopsis. That's probably
Yeah,
not a
sure.
but cradle to cradle to me means, designing a product with the end life in consideration.
Mm. Like where it's
So,
going to go, right?
yeah, like in the, usually the landfill or something like that, or designing a product so it doesn't have to end up in a
Yeah,
landfill.
hopefully not.
Yeah, exactly. Like that, it's completely up to you. But I feel like that's what we should be taught, pretty early on in like the how to sketch phase and like how to draw and stuff
Yeah.
like that when designers are going through like their basic courses.
Well,
So
I
I
see.
feel,
Like in their first year, their first semester.
yeah, first and second year for sure. Um, because art history can only go so far.
Right.
But I feel like if we start there with students who are curious about how to make an impact and why they do the things they do, the
Hmm.
environment is should and always be at the forefront. And yeah, because
Yeah.
that's why, like Michelle was saying earlier, it applies to whether you're a graphic designer, fashion designer, industrial designer,
Right. I
all
mean,
of the above.
universal. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So the first 2 years then are like everything that you would learn typically plus these principles of sustainability and environmental science. Got it. Michelle, do you have any thoughts on that? Would you want to take classes like that?
I would. I agree with Gigi, and I I feel like it should be foundational. So I agree it should be in the first year that we should be learning it, and it should only be deeper embedded as we keep going through the curriculum.
Mhm.
And another thing we could learn as designers is having integrity. And this is kind of hard, but
Yeah. What does that mean?
just like choosing to work for a company that has a mission or has values that are good.
Yeah.
And
For the common good.
yeah, and that's hard because I recognize that not everyone has that privilege. And
Sure.
I recognize that, people have to survive and they need to take jobs and they shouldn't be shamed for, taking a job for whatever company it is that is not, environmentally friendly or responsible.
Got to pay your
But
bills, you know?
yeah, yeah. And so I feel like that should be taught alongside just foundational best practices of your major and how to just be sustainable in the field that you're working in.
Hmm. So it seems like you want some more like conversations around ethics and working and after school type situations too.
Yeah, because um, now that I've graduated and kind of like before I was going to graduate, I was like, what am I going to do though? Because you don't really know what a sustainable career looks like for a graphic designer. And that can just be, you know, just having that integrity and choosing to work for companies that are going to be socially responsible.
Hmm.
But otherwise, it's kind of hard to find your place.
Yeah. Do you find the same thing, Gigi, that there's a need for that kind of conversation, uh, maybe like more in your as you become towards a senior?
Um, yeah. And to kind of go off your point about ethics, I think that's become a big part of choosing my next career, or not my career, but my next position with a company or even doing freelance work. Is designers sometimes get like chewed up and spit out, and it's very
Yeah.
easy to become just tired or just kind of worn out over time through the different hats that you're wearing, let alone uh, having your passion kind of put to the background.
Mm.
Uh, so yeah, I definitely think yeah, just to agree your point.
Like the chewed up and spit out part, like that's where do you find that happening? Is it just that they you burn out, or they just hire you and let you go?
Um, well, in my experience and a lot of my, prior or previous colleagues' experiences, we've worked for a lot of startups,
Mm.
and that is a very either a toxic culture or it's very draining. Um,
Yeah.
and it's very few and far between where you find a startup that fits you and actually is successful.
Yeah.
And successful, I mean, like through ethics wise and also, um, profit and growth. Um, so yeah, I think ethics for me at my point in my career is I've experienced a few startups where I'm burnt out and
Mm.
I think the next position that I want is something that's more focused around who I am as a designer, what I want to do for that company, what I bring, what I offer, um, and whatnot, because those are important. And my voice has value, just like every other designer's voice has value.
Right. Right. It sounds like you've had a pretty rough start to your career.
Yeah, but I mean, that does have to go along the lines of like, I have taken positions where, I have to pay my bills.
Yeah.
So it has been difficult to act on why I do what I do
Hmm.
first rather than as an afterthought to, you know, I need money to pay my rent type of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. I know, Michelle, you mentioned that multidisciplinary, not necessarily sure about what to call yourself as a designer, but do either one of you have a like a dream design job or a project that you'd want to do?
Um, I guess I used to think I did, but
Oh no.
my dreams are crushed.
They were crushed.
But I guess now that I'm getting more experience, I don't want to speak on what my dream job would be because I guess I don't really know now.
Oh, okay.
Now that I'm getting more experience.
So you had one and then you working more and then you're realizing maybe that's not what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I guess so. Or I just would need to dabble in the other areas to see if I'm more interested in that
I see.
because I've gotten a lot of experience, in one thing, but, I haven't explored in other things.
Yeah. What about you, Gigi?
Yeah, same thing. I really don't know. I thought I knew a long time ago, but it's changed quite a bit just with the experiences I've had and understanding how difficult it is to actually get sustainable products incorporated into onto shelves, let alone into a
Mm.
design process. So I don't know. I'm still searching.
Would it be fair to say to both of you that climate's an important or climate and social impact are important components to what your dream design job or career would be?
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then, here's your chance. Then I'm giving you the opportunity in this question to become a design educator like me. And you're planning the ideal in your mind, the ideal design class or project, design project. You're going to teach this class to cover what you think is important for upcoming design graduates. What would that be?
What would the class curriculum look like?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
What would you do? You're the teacher now, not the student. Roles reversed, and you're in charge. From what you've learned, what would you think needs to be taught and why?
Take it away, Gigi.
I
Like,
know. This is a
word.
tough. It can be a tough question for sure, but now's your chance to enact revenge, right? As as the students becoming teachers.
Okay, well, I guess I would start with probably, I mean, sketching obviously is super important to know. I think that's like the first step into realizing if design is right for you.
Hmm.
Yeah, definitely work on some sketching, physical, digital, all of the above. The Adobe Suite for sure, um, depending on what you're using it for.
So
See,
technical skills are super important. Dude,
oh
that's
yeah,
going to be included. Yeah. Okay.
because those will always be around. Like Adobe,
Yeah.
I've worked in Adobe for 10 years now, so like it's always been a part of my life.
Yeah.
Um,
It's your best friend or your enemy at the same time.
oh yeah, both at all time. But going back to the ideologies of cradle to cradle design,
Hmm.
uh, sustainable solutions, problem solving in a slow design timeline type of way.
Can you define that for us? Slow design.
Yeah, sure. Slow design to me is, and you can find this on my website too, in my about page on Gianna Romero designs.com. But I talk a little bit about slow design timelines being essential to the environment and how if you think about a product or whatever you're designing and giving yourself time to do it in as far as like your employer giving you the time to design it fully to
Mm-hmm.
consider its full life, going back to the cradle to cradle idea, um, that is going to be a more impactful, more like the product is going to have a longer lifespan rather than if you have a short timeline and something that doesn't give you time to consider all of those things.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by slow design.
Got it.
And also going back to the curriculum of, you know, if that's not considered, how do you problem solve and how do you, fast track what sustainability looks like to you in what you do? And then going from there and involving that deeper into whatever you choose to do with that career path.
Right.
That makes sense.
Got it. Would it be designing a specific or solving a specific problem in this class or something in particular like a product or using cradle to cradle ideologies?
Probably using cradle to cradle, but there's also so much more that goes into it. I feel like just teaching the fundamentals of like what we were talking about earlier with like
Right.
human ethics in the workplace and ethics surrounding the environment and things like that. Those are also important things to gauge in that curriculum conversation.
Totally understand. I like this. I've
Yeah.
been on board with this for a while, so we're on the same wavelength.
Love it.
Michelle, it's your turn. You are my teacher, so I need to learn what am I doing?
Well, I feel that a class about design ethics would be great, which already exists. And I feel that it should be incorporated in every class,
Hmm.
just kind of as a foundation. But I guess I wish there was a class where I could learn more and research more about what happens to digital things that we don't use anymore.
Oh, good question.
Um, yeah, for a graphic designer, you're not always working with physical things. And of course, I feel that you could probably find the answer faster when it comes to learning about things that you print out and where that waste goes. But I guess a class about your digital footprint as a designer and your responsibility towards just handling your work in the right way, I guess that would be interesting.
Yeah, it's like a life cycle class.
Yeah.
You and Gigi can teach it together because it sounds like you're also thinking on the same, which is good to hear.
Life cycle. I like that
Yeah,
terminology.
it's the joint co-taught life cycle class by you two.
Or fun.
Yeah, I just have one more question for you because we're running out of time. And this kind of came up as I was talking earlier about your classmates and specifically the ones that maybe didn't care or didn't seem to care based on what you noticed. How do we get them interested in the climate or interested in designing more responsibly? What kind of advice can you give to all the design educators about is it through a project? Is it through a reading? Like, how do we get them more excited about this?
I think for me, and what got me excited about it, and what I could tell from and remember from my previous classes as well, is watching documentaries on like climate change and how very
Mm,
real it is, and how documentarians tell that story and how they bring it to an urgent perspective. So I guess through a way of teaching it through documentaries and also, doing your research, I feel it was what motivated us to get, you know, inspired.
Did it motivate you through fear or how did it motivate?
That's a good question. But I mean, I think it's a little bit of fear and inspiration.
Ah,
Like
that's
fear
the hopeful part.
inspiration. Yeah, that's the helpful part, of
Yeah.
course. And I see nothing wrong in that. Like that's like a big part of the reason why I do what I do is through that hope that, I, along with many other designers who think the same way, a lot of climate designers as well, and
Yeah.
enact change.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there because all of those documentaries that I've seen have been scary, depressing, but at the same time, they are hopeful. Like they don't end like, okay, just curl up in a ball now, we're done.
Yeah.
It's provides things that you can do, other things to learn about. So I feel the same way.
Yeah. Like the action part, like the call to action, either links or, discussions at the end is something that I think for every documentary I've seen, like I've always gone to those links just
Yeah.
because it's what one of my personal interests are. And
It
I think
surprised me in a class that I taught once where we actually had a climate scientist in my class. He talked about it, and then a student raised his hand and said, "But is this something that my generation has to worry about?" And I was a little taken aback by that, and
oh, oh no.
I think he was too.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, maybe we assume too many more people than actually are aware of it
Yeah, well, I mean,
or
that
not
goes
aware of
to
it.
the issue of, like, curriculum and how we can make this a part of, the greater knowledge, you know?
Mm,
Like, that person probably didn't really know, too I don't know, maybe I'm assuming, but maybe he was unaware.
yeah. Well, it sounds like just showing these films is like a sense of honesty, right? Like just be honest with the students and let them draw their own conclusions from it.
Yeah.
Michelle, what do you think about this question?
I think that it would probably take trial and error because, you have to know your students and you have to know how to introduce something to them in a way that's interesting.
Yeah.
But I personally am interested in something if my professor is passionate about it, or they if they're saying it's a serious thing, they obviously have more experience than you do. And so it's probably something that you should take more serious.
Right.
But I'm not sure exactly how I would try to get my students more interested because, everyone's different. So,
Yeah, that's true. There's not like a design student is the same everywhere.
yeah.
That's not true, right? But I like that idea about just showing your passion, like showing that can radiate out. It's
Yeah.
contagious. Well, thanks both of you for spending an hour with me on the show. I really appreciate it, and I do hope that you are now part of the Climify network, like you brought up the idea of network in the beginning. So maybe this network can help you in your next steps in your job search and career. So I'll ask you one more time, Michelle, where can we find you online if we're looking for the work that you're doing?
MichelleWin.design.
Gigi, where can we find you?
You can find me on the climatedesigners.org website. Just type in my name. I am a recognized climate designer. And you can also find my personal portfolio at Gianna Romero designs.com.
Thank you. And it sounds like Michelle needs to get on the climatedesigners.org site as well.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Thank you both. It was really nice to learn from you today. And it's I think brave of you, right, to come on and tell us professors what we're doing right and wrong. I really appreciate that you did that because I think there's a lot to learn from what both of you had to say.
Yeah, thank you. This was very insightful and a lot of fun.
Thank you.
This podcast is written, produced, and engineered by me. Designed by Bashul Rashik and Mark O'Brien. With social media strategy by Michelle Wynn. Music by Casual Motive. Well, that's a wrap. Season 2 is over, as are the U.S. midterm elections, Twitter, American and Canadian Thanksgivings, and nearly 2022. This season, the show's focused on why we should rebrand climate action and how we can do it. I learned from my guests that indeed we should rethink how we tell our climate stories. We need more engaging campaigns that are designed for very specific audiences, which embrace their local experiences in the messaging. These can be funny, but most importantly, they need to give folks actionable steps that they can take. And in the messaging, the design might be more successful without even mentioning the words climate change at all. I also learned that the principles of healthy soil can be inspiration for how designers can create. Answers to our climate problems are all around us, and that our Indigenous brothers and sisters have known this for a very long time. We should listen, embrace complexity, think in systems, and help one another. Designers know every single one of us needs to be resilient and hopeful. A climate muskox, because every fraction of a degree is worth fighting for. So, until next season, enjoy your holidays and keep on doing good work. And speaking of the holidays, I may have a little gift for you on December 14th, so don't go hibernating quite yet.
Thanks for listening to Climify. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. To catch all the latest on Climify, you can follow us on Instagram at Climify Podcast. Climify is part of Climate Designers. Learn more at climatedesigners.org/edu.